For more resources, visit rym.org.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
The Local Youth Worker is a daily podcast that's centered on 5 questions each week. Ranging from the practical to the professional, we're looking for answers to the questions you're asking. Whether you're in full-time, part-time, or even volunteer youth ministry, this podcast is for you.
Hey everybody, welcome back. All this week we were talking to Reverend John Stone. Yesterday we talked about discipleship, and today, John, since yesterday we were talking about discipleship kind of broadly, speaking about how to do discipleship, what that should look like, and defining that, which was really helpful. Today, let's move into maybe some focused advice, and really how I want to set that up is getting you to imagine that you had the opportunity to talk to your younger self. Because, John, how old were you when you started ministry?
I graduated from seminary at the age of 27.
Okay.
Which is far too young to be ordained, but that's a discussion for another day.
So imagine you get to walk into a coffee shop and you see your 27-year-old self sitting there, and you get to sit down, have a cup of coffee with your younger self. What are 3 pieces of advice you would tell your younger self about ministry?
John, I'm going to give you 4 pieces. The first one is for humor, and you can choose to edit it out. But the first piece of advice I'd give that guy is he needs to exercise more when he's young, because it is hard to lose that weight post 50. So I would encourage him to do. I used to run all the time, and running did not prove to be that healthy for me. But that's not what your lesson. 3 pieces of advice.
That's good. That's good, though, and that's important for ministry. Absolutely. Yeah. We had Richie Sessions on not too long ago. He gave that advice: exercise.
You are not. You cannot make up at the age of 50 what you've failed to do at 35 for your body. And I would do more yoga. Okay, so the 3 pieces of ministerial advice I would give myself would be, and this is really about me, so some people will hear this, and this is where they are and other people are not, is that, John, I put way too much emphasis on theological precision at that age when I started out, and not enough emphasis on just the Bible. Now, and those are not antithetical, and I don't mean it, but really letting the Bible speak to me, and to recognize, for instance, I'm a very strong Calvinist. I'm a 5-pointer. I'm a double predestination guy, but letting the Bible's own language, letting the mystery that, so I know God's infinite, eternal, and unchangeable, but man, I really at 53 don't know what that means the way I think I knew at 27. And so I think that I would have been much, I would tell me, because I really believe, it's funny, I've seen a lot of people's beliefs evolve as they get older, and a lot of people will, leave the Reformed camp and go somewhere else. Mm-hmm. I believe what I believed at 27, but I think I just believed it too strongly. And this is different than the young Calvinist disease. Once you learn about the 5 points of Calvinism, you beat everybody over the head with it. I just mean even in what we talked about yesterday, I thought in terms of discipleship or teaching just too theologically. And the funny thing is, I think theology is a big deal. I work for RUF. Helping people get categories is a big deal. But I would just tell me to think more about Scripture. And to really let the scriptural language form the way people think, and let them struggle with that more at that age. The second thing I would say, and this is a little bit easier, a little more practical, is people who've been to seminary or people who begin to do professional ministry do not know how normal people think. If you have gone to seminary, you're such a small percentage of the population in terms of world history and who exists even today, that you're so weird, not because you went to seminary, you're just such, you have studied and thought about things that your good ruling elder accountant never thought about. And if you're out there saying, well, I know all my elders they all read Calvin's Institutes. You have weird elders, not because. So you'll get a letter from that, John. I'm sorry, but my point is, you need to listen to people, and you need to speak to them. One of the things I said to RUF guys all the time is, does a sophomore woman in RUF who's a Chi Omega at your school, does she understand what you're saying? No, because you're talking about John Calvin, you're talking about Jack Miller, you're talking about Berkhoff, you're answering all these questions, which it was very important for you to learn that those aren't her questions. Those aren't her thoughts. And especially for a youth pastor, really understanding where youth are and how they think is vital. And I'll come up with another third one. Maybe, John, what I would say in some sense is the best people I ever hired and the best I've ever been in a job I had is when I wanted to actually be the people I was ministering to. And what I mean by that is, if you're a youth pastor, and the truth is, and I'm not judging you for this, but if you hate youth culture and you don't understand why they play Fortnite and why they love games, you're not called to be a youth pastor. Like, the best RUF campus ministers are out there right now playing Fortnite because it's creating relationships and they're understanding their people better. You don't want to make them you. You want to make them the best of them. And I'm telling you, if you went to seminary, if you grew up in a PCA church, you tend to be a long way away from understanding what the average person is afraid of, what they're thinking about, what they're feeling, their level of knowledge. And you need to spend your life studying and listening to people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that kind of gets to what you were saying yesterday about discipleship, being with people and being around them. And, the fancy seminary language is exegeting your congregation. But, getting to know how those teenagers think and getting to hear, their struggles and all of that is vital. I mean, there was a pastor just in my presbytery around here who really would encourage young guys who are leaving college to go work outside in the quote unquote secular world before they went straight to seminary, because he just said that, you need to be around just people that don't think like you, talk like you, whatever, to sharpen you. So I think that goes right along with what you're saying.
Yeah. I think I'm just amazed how often pastors who are great men, who are godly men, who love their people, who love Christ, just at times, if you listen to them, they don't know why someone missed a church meeting or why this person wants X. And I think you don't know them. I'm not even saying it's right, but like the average guy out there, and this isn't youth, the average guy's got a mortgage, a tremendous wife, and 3 kids. He can't breathe at work. He can't breathe at home. He can't exercise. Understanding that and not judging it and not condemning it is a big deal in doing ministry. Understanding that kids today were born with a cell phone in their heart and that's okay. We're not losing a generation to cell phones. They have more access to pornography. I don't know how to deal with that, but I've raised 3 girls on cell phones. I'm not saying from the time they were 7 years of age, and they love Jesus and they're fine. But understanding why that's important to people is a big deal. I've raged on about that enough. I think I owe you a third one, don't I?
You do. So the first one was hate theology. No, I'm kidding.
No, the first one would be better. Say it positively. Love the Bible more. Let it nuance you. Understand your people and that you're not them. And my third piece of advice would be, John, it's not. I don't have one jump into my head. How have I really changed? I think piece of advice I would give my young self is you don't really understand how broken people are. Now, this is not the same thing as the first one, but I'm aware that sin's in the world and sin's devastated it, but people's stories are far more important, I think, for me now than I understood then. So, I'm not changing language, but who hurt them, how they were raised, even learning that most people are warriors. It's surprising they've made it this far. So at 27, I'm like, we can make you better. And I think at 52, I'm like, I don't know how you got here. I'm impressed that you're at church with that backstory. So I might nuance it and say I tell myself to get to know people's stories better and to appreciate the grace of God in those stories, that we've all been raised by two sinners, or by one sinner, or by divorced sinners, or by sinners who adopted us. We've all been raised by sinners. We were all educated by sinners. We all live with sinners. And that devastation can be more real at times than the church wants to admit. That being a church member, being an evangelical, especially in the West, there can be a little victoriousness there that I don't think is very helpful for people. So inviting people to be broken and to that be a part of my ministry, which it has become at this point, but at that point it was not. That'd be my third piece of advice.
Yeah, and I think that goes along with just, understanding and having a theology of suffering.
Yes.
When I look back, at my younger self and just some of the harshness that was present, and just not, and really the broader theme of just humility here, realizing that there's a lot of those people, those parents you can be frustrated with, speaking to youth workers here, the suffering that they've dealt with, the suffering that's present, that's no doubt those who are 27 in ministry have gone through suffering, but sometimes it's not to the degree that others have. And so having that humility and really just realizing the havoc that brokenness and sin brings into this world.
Yep, I agree.
All right. Well, John, thanks again for that. I appreciate it.
All right.